I'm awake. Are you?
I wonder how many miles I've fallen. It seems I'll get to the center of the earth.
Curious, isn't it? And really, nothing's quite impossible.
Let's go now to our new episode of The Unfiltered Rise with me, Heidi Love.
2, 3. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Unfiltered Rise with me, Heidi Love. And today I have an amazing guest with me, you guys. She has let me have a little bit of her time. Marilynne Roach. She is an author, multi-book author, by the way, writer. She's a researcher, presenter, historian. I'm telling you, you guys, she is busy, but she does a lot on the Salem witch trials. And that is where I want to talk about today. And I want to welcome you and have you introduce yourself to my audience. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Yes, I'm Marilynne Roach, and I've written a couple of books on the Salem witch trial. And it seems like there's always something else, some other information turning up even after over 300 years.
Wow.
My math's not that quick.
That's amazing. I think the truth is so obfuscated in general that I think that's why, it's still coming out possibly, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, there was a lot written about it at the time. There's a ton of court records left, not everything. And, there's these gaps. You want to read what didn't get saved or hasn't yet been discovered. But a lot of it is available and online now, too. And books were written at the time, both explaining what the court was doing and criticizing what the court was doing. And they're still available, those books, and a whole lot of commentary afterwards. But a lot of stereotypes and urban legends and just interesting but not true stories have gotten attached to it. It's spooky, and you can get off the topic with that. And of course, spooky stuff what drew me in the first place. But it turns out to be a very complicated situation because it involves people, humans, and politics and war and economy and just neighborhood feuds and a lot of moving parts because it was the whole region. It wasn't one town. And it took place over a better part of a year and then the fallout from it. But in order to sum it up, it can minimize what happened for certain parts of it. And finding out the whole story would be nice. It would have to be a fly on the wall. And they haven't invented that app yet.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I think you're right. We see a lot of weird land disputes and this preacher that comes in and has these interesting situations. They're kind of trying to get him kicked out of town. Reverend Paris.
Yes. Yeah. They thought they had finally found the minister who was going to be there for the rest of his life. Ideally, it was a lifetime association with the community, but that's the ideal and the reality don't always work. But prior to that, others had seemed to be working out. Everybody was happy, but then when there was a move to make them permanent minister, then there'd be disputes between different factions. And the minister would say, the heck with that, and leave the town for another place. Well, not almost swearing, of course, but yeah. But they had engaged Samuel Paris. He was ordained. I mean, this is the way Congregationalism worked at the time. He's sort of permanently associated with this particular church. But then not half, but a good piece of the population eventually realized they don't like him that much, and they would prefer he went somewhere else. But he does have his supporters. I think the majority did continue to support him, but there's that tension. People have stopped paying his salary and stopped donating their part towards his firewood, and winter is coming on. So that's tense and cold. But there's still going all around that because Salem Village, where the outbreak begins, was the rural part of Greater Salem. It's now like 3 or 4 different towns, but it's Salem village off in the rural part, Salem town, which is much more prosperous and associated with maritime trades down by the harbor part. And a good part of the village would like to separate and be their own town. And the distance alone makes that practical. But there are economic defense advantages to being part of Salem itself. So that there's that dispute.
Right. And then Mary Easty was one that came to his aid, so to speak, at some point, right? I think I read, and that might be part of what happened with her, but I'm sure you know much more.
She lived in another town and attended a different church. I mean, they're all Congregationalists, but each church is an independent body. Well, no, she doesn't get part of it until later, but there is a war on between Canada and the New England colonies because England and France are at odds. The native allies to the French forces have their own reasons for not wanting English encroachment any further. So they're allying with the French. This doesn't help with the economy because there are raids from the frontier. There are privateers at sea on each side going after each other. This interrupts the fishing industry and trade along the coast. And on the other hand, some people are trading with the French anyway because there's money in it. Let's see. And there's now and then there's some smallpox. And Massachusetts has lost its charter, which gave it its legal government from England. So they're getting a new one. There's been years of negotiation and a couple of regime changes in England. But now Massachusetts is going to get the new charter. They don't quite know what's in it yet because it doesn't arrive until June of 1692 when this is already started. Problems already started. How much self-government are they going to be allowed to have? Which never really gets resolved until the American Revolution. But that's got people on edge. Because prior to that, when England ruled more directly for a short time, all land grants were kind of deeds were voided. I mean, not because they were sympathetic with the indigenous people who hadn't really meant to sign anything away, but because technically at the time, as one of the unsympathetic governors pointed out, everywhere an Englishman puts his foot belongs to the king, the government. So they get to make the rules. So are we going to go back to that idea, or are we going to have the self-rule that was more or less the case from the beginning for a couple of decades because England was preoccupied with other things and let Massachusetts to its own devices? So
they were doing their own thing.
It would lead to all sorts of things like possible democracy, and we don't want that.
Definitely not. The king wants his thumb on all of it, right?
Yes. Well, one of the kings got kicked out a few years before, actually. But and his father before him was beheaded, so things happen overseas too. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And this situation, with this particular lady that we're going to discuss today, I mean, we are talking in full about Salem, which I love. But this whole situation with her, I think she was the only one with her head screwed on, right? Her and her
well, not the only one, but she spoke out too. Yes. I am surprised that she was accused, but because she lived in another town, Topsfield, which is nearby, but near enough.
Yes, Topsfield is an amazing rabbit hole. And actually, I don't know if you know what I do. I've left the Mormon church. I'm in Utah. And the reason why I found out about Mary Easty is because she had a very interesting accuser in Samuel Smith. Samuel Smith is Joseph Smith's great-great-grandfather. And so... Yes, I did not know this. Yeah, I didn't know this. I was just researching for spooky season and smack ran into that because his family hails from Topsfield and they're the selectmen of Topsfield. And wouldn't you know it, they end up, his son Samuel's son ends up marrying Priscilla Gould.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah. So I
Oh,
think
yeah,
they
they
had their
did
feet
that
in
to
it.
me.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that's right. Also, Topsfield and Salem Village were at odds over the boundary line and who owned the wood lot and the wood pile. Fuel. He thought it was agreed upon salary was that they would donate X amount of wood for the year. And unfortunately, the chimneys were not fuel. Uh, they wasted a lot of heat right up the chimney. So
That's not good.
it took a lot. And they were going through the little ice age then, so they were really cold
Oh.
early, more than now. So,
Mm.
yeah, that's right.
That's not
Because
good.
Marius, this older sister was Rebecca Nurse, who lived in Salem Village and is accused earlier. And she's a full member of the church. She seems to be a upright citizen, and everybody likes her. And she's elderly and a little hard of hearing, but she has an intact family. I mean, most or all of the nurse's children survive to adulthood, so they're around and they're supportive. It's not like the kids die young and there's nobody to speak for or somebody widowed.
No, they have a huge family progeny, right? And funny enough, again, the Mormons come up. Mitt Romney is one of her descendants, and I thought that was so weird. Yeah, I'm just like, oh, fascinating.
You find descendants everywhere, it seems.
Yes. They had a lot of kids, like you said. So.
They did, and they survived too. And the Easties had a number of children, and they were supported. We just don't have as much paperwork surviving. But with Rebecca, the family got neighbors to sign petitions saying what a good person she was and speak for her, and it didn't work, but they tried. And
well,
and their
tried, yeah.
Sarah Cloyce is also arrested. She does survive because she doesn't come to trial until after the panic is over.
Wow.
Nowadays, October is Mardi Gras in Salem.
Well, that's wild.
It is. It's not what it was like in 1692, which is serious business. But by chance, the panic was subsiding in October in that year. And the next set of trials that would have happened on the 1st of November, get canceled at the last minute while they wait to hear from England what they should do, because every trial seems to spark more accusations and more hard feelings. It was just escalating. And by then, there were enough people touched by the panic. I've got relatives I trust, so I know that they're not guilty. That sort of attitude.
And they arrested a 4-year-old. I was like, "What? What is going on here?"
She was with her mother very early on. That was the first month. But her little specter was perceived by the bewitched girls as tormenting them. Maybe she yelled at them when they arrested her mother. I don't know.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That's a very sad story. She's in jail for the rest of the year and a half. Year.
And she lost a baby too. She lost that baby, right?
It died.
She had. Oh my gosh.
She had already had the kid it was a little girl in the December before the panic began. I found the vital records, and it went with her to jail because she's nursing the baby. But it dies in jail, and the little girl stays behind when the mother, Sarah Good, is brought up to Salem for the trial. And it's
so sad.
And the trial's in Salem because it's the county seat. And it's more of the uncertainty of the times before that, when witchcraft accusations didn't come up that often, now and then. All capital cases, such as witchcraft, would be heard in Boston by the upper house of the legislature, which originally acted as a superior court as well as a cabinet, say, to the whoever the governor was. But in 92, because the new charter comes, the government has to be shifted around a bit and changed. Specifically, do not do anything repugnant to British law. And they kept harping on the repugnancy clause. They did not want to lose another charter. So they had to reconfigure the rules, but before they could go through the process of figuring out how the courts would be arranged differently, they had to do something about the witchcraft accusations, because 4 jails in 3 counties are overflowing. So they established a temporary court, which this is legal in England in case of emergency, a temporary court of oyer and terminer to hear and to determine, to handle capital cases. They could handle any kind of crime, but it was 99 and 99/100% witchcraft accusations that summer.
Oh, wow.
So
Well, and I guess the Easty's mother was like accused at some point.
Yes, Joanna Town, the girl's maiden name, the daughter's maiden name. She wasn't formally accused, but people did wonder about her.
Mm-hmm.
She took the side of a controversial minister that was in Topsfield, for one thing. Some said he was a drunk. And she said it was his Scottish accent. He wasn't slurring his speech, it was his accent. But it took different sides. But she expressed herself forcefully. So, she had a kind of a reputation for speaking up when some people maybe didn't want her to, but she did anyway. So they
sounds like my kind of girl. Yeah.
Yeah, well, now it's, go ahead. But it could backfire in extreme situations like this, which was extreme, because Englanders weren't doing this every day of the week. It was unusual, and it flared up because everything else was going wrong. And then it appeared that maybe there was some bewitchment at work in the village, because the 2 girls, the daughter and the niece of Reverend Parris in Salem village, started acting oddly. They had aches and pains, they were making odd noises. It's hard to know what they were doing. One's 9 and the other's 11 or 12. But let's see, this is in January, it seems to be the symptoms start. And around that time, there had been a horrific attack on York, Maine, which is in the south of Maine, and not that far from Massachusetts and Salem. So maybe that was one other stress point, because are we going to live out the night or will we be attacked?
Mm-hmm.
The family,
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's constant worry, and there's not a lot of you can't call the cops. You hope the neighbors or the militia, if someone's standing watch for the militia, will alert. But communication takes time. So when they start acting oddly, and it will escalate, the family treats it as a regular illness. They pray for them. They use home remedies. And then they start consulting various physicians in the neighborhood. There was some nearby, and there was some who sort of wrote a circuit to treat an area. And none of them could come up with a reason for why they're acting like that. And of course, Puritan parents weren't known to be terribly lenient. They loved their children, but they weren't putting up with a lot of nonsense either. So there was something about it that seemed serious. And eventually, a neighbor comes around when the parents are out of the house and has a suggestion of an English folklore way to a spell to counteract evil spells. I mean, this isn't magic. This is repelling magic, they're thinking. And instead, it just gets them more frightened, and they start reporting seeing things. And then I suppose they repeat whatever they heard the adults say, like speculating, well, who would be doing it? because one of the doctors says they must be under an evil hand, under a curse. And that just escalates. And then there are other young girls in town, opposite ends of the geography. So it's I don't know how they communicated or whatever, but gossip gets around. And then in the course of the year, most of them drop out of the picture, except for one, Ann Putnam Jr. And this older 16, 17-year-old and early 20s. And there were a few males who thought they were afflicted, but and the cast changes as the summer goes on, because once the panic spreads to Andover, to the north, other people are acting bewitched and seeing specters, they say. And how much is they've convinced themselves, how much might be seeing things out of the corner of your eye that's misinterpreted, how much is consciously or unconsciously getting back at neighbors. So eventually, Mary Easty or Easty, it's spelled several different ways. There's no consistency. Spell check goes crazy when I work on it.
Yeah, it's so true. Oh.
She's named among a whole bunch of other people, and a complaint is made out against her and a whole bunch of other people from Topsfield and Salem on the 21st of April. So apparently the rumors have been going around for a while, and her sister, Rebecca Nurse, was already arrested and questioned in March. She's been in jail for a while.
These questionings and examinations, I wasn't prepared for what I found out when I guess they were checking their breasts and weird stuff. I'm like, what is going on? Yeah.
Well, the first line of questioning is a regular hearing, but before the trials, the actual trials, the suspects were searched for witch marks, which is either a sign that once you give your allegiance to the devil, is either a mark put on the devil's tattoo or whatever, or it's a place where an attendant imp who's doing the magical dirty work for you suckles nourishment from your blood or your soul or something. And so it looks suspicious. But that was conducted in the jail before the courtroom, and the list, there's a list of matrons and midwives doing the searching under the eye of a surgeon who's a man. So there is a list for a number of people, Bridget Bishop and some others who were tried fairly early, and also a list of men who were impaneled under the surgeon to examine the men who had been accused, because men were accused too, and 5 of them are going to hang eventually.
Wow.
So yeah,
that's wild. You better pray you don't have a birthmark, right? Like that.
Yeah, and there's people have freckles. They have scars
and moles. Yeah, moles.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right. Rebecca Nurse, in fact, wrote a statement or made a statement afterwards saying that some of the midwives weren't that experienced, and some of the older ones thought that what they saw, which is natural from childbirth or something. And could you please have this? I think she named certain people she trusted and said, "How about they take a look instead?" But it wasn't done. But the testimony apparently convinced the jury more than anything else.
And poor Mary, she was innocent, and then no. I couldn't believe it.
One of the young women who accused her particularly was Mercy Lewis, who was the maid working at Thomas Putnam's house originally. But she had a very unfortunate childhood in Maine because her parents had been killed in one of the frontier attacks. She might have and been, I think, 5, pretty young, and evacuated to an island in Casco Bay with the survivors from the settlement uh, to hide out until boats could come from Boston to take them further south. So before the French and Indians could get at them, that's not too calming for a child or anybody. And later she worked for the minister George Burroughs in Wells, Maine, when he was relocated there. He's going to be accused too, and arrested. So and she gets down to Salem Village, where she appears in the records as working Thomas Putnam's family. And his daughter, Anne Jr., was one of the first four to be considered afflicted. And she continued throughout most of all these proceedings as an afflicted witness. But Mercy, it's been theorized, Mary Beth Norton's In the Devil's Snare is study of the mostly the girls from its connections with Maine, and she thought that possibly Mercy Lewis and others from that background had PTSD as on that line, which is possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, if she had this horrible childhood and who knows what happens, why she shuffled about,
Yeah, she lost her family. So she's one of the afflicted witnesses against Mary Easty on that first day. And we have some of the dialogue, at least when she's questioned on the 22nd. She says, "Would you have me accuse myself?" She's asking the magistrate. He says, who's convinced already that there has to be something to it if there is convulsions going on the floor in front of her. And she's asked her what she thought was happening. Then, if it's not her, she says it's an evil spirit, but whether it be witches, I do not know. And she wouldn't get so rattled that she confessed, as a number of people did later, especially when they just were barraged with questions. It was evident that the person asking the question thought you were guilty, and maybe they second guessed themselves, because I'm not a perfect person, so maybe I did something where the devil got in there and had some, or they were just so scared that they couldn't remember what they had said. Some of them deposed later that it was mostly just agreeing with whatever they were asked, and that
because they'd let them go, right? If they confess, they'd let them go, but then they take their land, right? Like some of them.
Nobody lost land. Nobody lost land. I'm happy to say.
Okay.
And anyway, the women didn't. If a woman was married, she didn't own it. Her husband did.
Right.
She'd owe jail bills and so on. Room and board could add up, but no, you didn't get the land, and they were not released if they confessed, and a confession was a believable confession, or two reputable witnesses to a criminal act was what you were supposed to find, or not, if it hadn't happened. But no, they kept them as potential witnesses against their supposed co-conspirators. And if they were lucky, the panic had died down before they were put to trial. So that by then, the grand jury and the trial juries were no longer accepting spectral evidence, which is the reports from the bewitched people as to the visions and apparitions that they saw. And I mean, even if you, they could be crazy, they could be making it up, but the consensus, if anyone was sympathetic to them, consensus was, well, the devil's a liar, so they can't be sure that that's really what's happening. It's an illusion of the devil just to make trouble, and it was certainly making trouble. So once they stopped accepting spectral evidence, and the judges later said that there was more than spectral evidence. We were using other testimony as well. if you look at it, it seems like really unfortunate coincidences, like the cow dies after you yell at the cow's owner. So after that, there were not the convictions. But I'm not really sure what that people had against Mary Easty, except the Topsfield, Salem Village, and what neighborhood rivalries and so forth.
And it sounds like the mom raised these girls to speak their mind. I don't think they were shy.
Actually.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
So she does. We have some of her words, which is really great. But she's jailed, awaiting trial along with a whole lot of other people. That's on the 22nd of April. But all of a sudden, she did. We don't have paperwork in between. But by the 19th of May, she's apparently home. She's been let go. So maybe her family and her supporters came and spoke their minds, and the magistrates must have rethought whether this is really something we have enough evidence on or not. But she's home, except that Mercy Lewis is now having fits again, and she's blaming Mary Easty's apparition for it. In fact, she's apparently no help at all with the housework at the Putnam's house, because she's with a cousin who's the Constable John Putnam, who lives in the neighborhood, which would give a rest to the first household, but she's raising a ruckus at the second one. And let's see, she's in a bad way. She's convulsing, and the family sends for the other girls who can see the invisible world to come and diagnose what's wrong with her. What do they see hurting her? And they say Mary Easty's specter is a problem. So this takes some time during the day. They get in touch with the local. Well, he's comparable to sheriff, but he's a marshal at this point. The government hasn't been rearranged yet. Marshal Sheriff Herrick rides into Salem town, which is a distance, to get a warrant from the magistrate, I think it's Hawthorne, to arrest Mary Easty again. Goes all the way out through Salem Village to Topsfield, and arrests her in the night, I guess. Gets her into custody and brings her into Salem to be in jail to await being questioned again. And then around midnight, he gets back to where Mercy Lewis is convulsing, and around midnight to report that Mary Easty is in custody, but the girl still has a bad night. She maybe stops convulsing as badly, but she doesn't get much sleep. And the next day, there's an order to put Mary in chains, and once Mercy Lewis hears this, I suppose, that lets her calm down so she can get some sleep.
Oh, no.
But Mary, I mean, she hasn't done anything, and they're chaining. They're going to charge rent for the chains, by the way.
Oh, my goodness.
So, so then it's Sunday, and nothing happens with the court on Sunday, Sabbath. But on Monday, the 23rd, she's questioned again. We don't have the dialogue for that, but she is held for a trial later on when the government starts up again. And meanwhile, Mercy Lewis does finally stop convulsing, and they say she had been in a bad way that way 2 days and a night. So whatever it was strenuous.
I wonder if it was like a PTSD trigger from somebody that she knew or something, like, and it could be real, or if she was just playing games, who knows?
Or a combination.
Yeah. Or a real illness, I guess,
It could be, but it's very bad luck for
poor Mary. Yeah.
So that's in May, and at the end of May, the charter arrives with a new governor who has to be who was chosen by the crown, but they got a New England guy to be the governor. He's just not, he's not the most tactful person in the world. He's not really great as a governor, but he is more of a military leader than the ones who were trying to do that while he was away. So the Court of Oyer and Terminaire is temporarily convened the end of May and sits finally in Salem in June and try Bridget Bishop first. She's been suspected before, arrested for witchcraft before, but she's still alive. So apparently, the case was either dismissed or she's found not guilty. So unfortunately, she's found guilty this time and is hanged in June on the 10th. And it escalates, and in July on the 19th, Rebecca Nurse is hanged along with 4 other people. By August, 5 more people are hanged, including Reverend George Burroughs, for whom Mercy Lewis had worked. And in September on the 19th, there's 8 people hanged, which I assume was the maximum amount of whatever was being used as the gallows could hold.
Oh,
There's no evidence that one way or the other. But there have been more people than that found guilty. But in October, the trials are canceled by Governor Phibbs. And these other people are just sort of waiting to hear what's going to happen next. Those who have been found guilty in the death sentencing. So Phibbs writes to England saying he stopped the trials and we await your advice. But he does not tell the court that until the last minute. I think the Chief Justice, who is also the Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts under Phibbs, I think he intimidates Phibbs because Stoughton is an educated man. He's been to Oxford as well as Harvard, and Phibbs was learned to read when he was 21.
Oh, wow.
But he made a lot of money because he found actual sunken treasure in the Caribbean. And that's pretty much how he got to be governor of Massachusetts, because the king was darn good.
Huh.
He's a very interesting character, just not the most appropriate governor at the time. But he's north towards Maine fighting or seeing to fortifications for the war. And he says, well, I didn't know what was going on when I was up there. He knew what was going on because he was down here most of it. But, blame someone else.
It was the dog.
Yeah, the dog ate my warrant.
Oh, boy. Yeah, they were hanging dogs, too, which was weird.
Well, yeah, those were mob actions from the neighborhood. It wasn't official. And in fact, one was assumed to be bewitched, and the other was assumed to have a devil in him. And it was, someone pointed out, well, that's the only one of the bewitched they ever punished. and as Reverend Increase Mather pointed out, the dog that was assumed to be the devil couldn't be, because he's only a dog. Poor thing.
That's true. And they're feeding him urine cakes. So yeah, if they act weird, I mean, goodness.
Yeah, some dogs will eat anything. But before that, in September, the 8 who were hanged, one of them was Mary Easty. And according to a contemporary account, everybody who died that day said something appropriate at the gallows and did not confess and accused them, confess in quotes, and accused themselves. But before she was put to death, she composed a petition to the court saying that they were going the wrong way about it. It's real eloquent. Let me just.
It is. I'd love to go over it because at this time, just women, were not doing things like this. She was so before her time, it was wild.
But there might have been more unrecorded speaking up.
Sure.
But she addresses the governor, the court, and the minister. She says, knowing my own innocency and seeing plainly the wiles and subtlety of my accusers, I cannot but judge charitably of others that are going the same way of myself, meaning the other accused, unless the Lord steps in. Therefore, I petition not for my own life, for I know I must die, but if possible, no more innocent blood may be shed, which undoubtedly cannot be avoided by the way and course you go in. I question not but your honors would not be guilty of innocent blood for the world, but by my own innocency I know you are in the wrong way. I dare not belie my own soul. So she was speaking up for others at that point.
Right. Which is so nice. I mean, she could have just, not cared or been bitter, but she really seems, like I said, to have her head on right.
Yes, she did. And she continued to say that throughout. In fact, at her trial, there's a few depositions we don't have records of the actual trial, but there's depositions that people made, and the prison keeper and his wife in Ipswich, where she and Sarah Cloyce, her sister, were being held, wrote a statement that they were both very well behaved and nice people while they were here. And I think also they were moved around from one to another. Boston prison, what's it called? Salem, or the Salem one, but even some of the lower people who were in charge spoke up for what they actually knew of her. But unfortunately, it didn't work.
Yeah.
She was one of the last to be him. Although
right.
at the time, you didn't know it wasn't going to continue.
Yeah,
And
she wrote a couple of those, petitions, and I thought it was so smart of her to petition the governor, to add him on.
Yeah. Rebecca Nurse's family had taken their complaint to Governor Phipps too, and he actually paused and reprieved her for a time, but the outcry against her persuaded him otherwise.
Mm. Yeah, no other time really do we see such a huge, yes, we have cults that form things and do weird things, like we have Ruby Ridge or, Manson or whatever, but this is like the whole town. It seems, unreal.
It spread, the towns are divided as to whether it's happening, and a lot of people are just sort of, don't look at me, I'm not part of this, I want to stay out of the way. But there's Salem Village, there's Salem Town, and then there was Andover, where there were more people accused than in Salem, and other suspects in neighboring counties. There were some people in jail in Cambridge and some in Boston. And of course, Boston would be the main jail, especially if the legislature had tried them, as originally would have been the case. But because there were petitions that because the jails are so full and it's winter, could you at least let Mother out on bail over the winter? We'll bring her back in the spring when the court starts up. But and some
These
people
are elderly, like for the most part, right? They're older people.
Yeah, mature people.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, sad.
And mostly women, but not all.
Wow.
But in October he stops the trials. There would have been a sitting on the 1st of November. That doesn't happen. But people are getting sick in jail. Some are let out, and they're not hearing from England because it takes time to send something in a message in a boat across, and then it has to come back. But it also has to go through the labyrinth of politics in England to be commented on at all. And there's no answer until the following July, actually, when the answer is, well, do your best, use English law.
They gave the problem back to them. They're like, we don't want to deal with this. Yeah.
Right.
Jeez. Thanks for the help.
Yeah. By the end of December, they've reestablished how the court system should be set up so that a superior court that would sit for the different counties certain times of the year. And people are getting sick in jail. A couple of people have died of natural causes in the jail. And they resumed trials on their own without hearing from England in January, with the strict instruction that they're not supposed to consider spectral evidence. Don't trust it. And the ministers had been warning against being dependent on spectral evidence from the beginning and ignored. Been reassured. Well, we use more than that. I mean, it's distressing that the girls are having these visions, but we're using more than that, which, as I said, were mostly coincidences. So a lot of people went through the court in January, sat for 2 weeks. The grand jury dismissed a whole bunch of cases. A number of them did go to trial, and only 3 out of the 50 were found guilty. And according to the king's attorney, which is like attorney general, the evidence against them was no better than the evidence against the people who had been found guilty the summer before. So there would have been another set of executions, sort of internal evidence in the papers that do exist, that there would have been another set of executions on February 1st. And at the last minute, Phipps decides he's going to cancel this for now until he hears from the king anyway, and sends a message to Salem, hold off on that, which really surprised the Chief Justice because he hadn't been consulted on it. But he had a political disagreement with the governor a couple of days before that, and I think Phipps got up the nerve to contradict him publicly and stop the execution. The Chief Justice is not happy. He storms off the bench. They're hearing some cases from Middlesex County at the time, back witchcraft cases. And he's that angry about it. So for the rest of the session, he's elsewhere. But there was some suspicious circumstances about one of the suspects, but no one is found guilty. And there's other sittings for Suffolk County in April. No one's found guilty. And the last of the Essex County, which is where Salem is tried in Ipswich in May, and nobody's found guilty. And by then, people are going home once they pay their fees, the room and board business. And
were they very expensive? Do you know? Did they make it impossible for these people?
Well, it was expensive for those. 2 shillings 6p for room and board. I'm not sure how long it would take to earn that, but I think for a woman it would be it would be about a week's pay.
Wow.
Get out. I guess the families rally around, and some people, it sounded like neighbors got together to put a bond for good behavior for some of the, I guess that would people out on bail. But people are being let out, and by now it's a great embarrassment if you figure that you've been taken in by the devil, perhaps,
Right.
to believe the spectral evidence. And there is still the war to consider and everything else, and England's scrutiny and the economy and so on. So there is a group public apology in January 1697 when there's a public fast and people go to their respective churches on that day, and there's a group apology to God and the community that things haven't been going right. The war is still on, for one thing, but everybody knows we're really talking about the witch trials here. And in Second Church in Boston, now Old South Church, in the 3 of the judges were members of that congregation, and one of them, Samuel Sewell, stands up and takes personal responsibility for his part. He stands there, and his minister reads a prepared statement that he made about he hopes that God doesn't punish the whole community for his stupid mistakes. And he's the only one who made as public an apology as that. There was some written regrets from some of the jurors, but some people still have death sentences hanging over, been found guilty, and they're still alive. And the government doesn't want to have to touch this sort of accusation anymore. But by 1702, I think, there's petitions for clearing a woman, again, Abigail Faulkner of Andover, petitioned to have her name cleared so that this isn't going to happen. Besides the public stain on her name, she didn't want the sentence of death to be taken seriously and perhaps carried out. So that her name, and she had to do this a couple of times, but I think the second or third time, her name, Elizabeth Proctor, the woman in the crucible, her husband John is dead, and Sarah Wardwell, whose husband Samuel has been hanged, same day as Mary Easty. Their names are cleared, and so they're protected. And this information is in the deed records of deeds, land transactions, because where do you put it? How do you file something? This is the question. So
The
in
spectral file.
yeah, in the clerk's volume copied, where the deeds are copied, and they put this in at the bottom of the page. But other people are unprotected, and the people who are dead, already hanged, their families petitioned to clear their names. And this is finally 1720. I should know this. Got a picture of it. I think it's 1721 they're finally cleared. Those who petitioned. 1711.
It's 1711. And it's so important because they didn't even give these people a proper burial. They don't know where they're buried. Like, other than one, the family went back and got her. But I mean, it's just horrible. Yeah.
Well, there were three families had traditions that they went back and collected the bodies and brought them to the home farm. Rebecca Nurse, John Proctor, and George Jacobs Sr. There is a description of bodies being disposed of in August, in the middle of a heat wave. I'd like to find out, which I think was temporary, because one of them was Reverend Burroughs. It's described as his foot is sticking out of the earth. It was a shallow grave. On the other hand, his adult children decades later mentioned as some of the expenses they were put to for their father was his interment. So I think they collected him too. And I'm hoping that shallow grave was just temporary because of the weather situation. But
right.
It's bad enough.
Ooh, yeah, terrible. And then, I mean, just to know that some of these people, like a reverend or Mary, like, they're all a part of this church where they're supposedly one of the elect, one of the saved people. They're not like on the outskirts, you know.
Supposedly, maybe they got in under false pretenses, and people are wondering. Yeah, Rebecca Nurse was not Tory. 1711, yes. But some of the names were left out. And in the 1950s, the descendant of Wilmot Red, from Marblehead, petitioned Massachusetts to change things. And it was sort of a statement of regret that people in the past, not us, people in the past, had made this awful mistake, but we don't owe you anything.
Oh,
He wasn't asking for money, just wanted her name cleared. But in 2001, after many years of getting this through the government, uh, 5 more names were cleared. Some had been neglected completely or were just mentioned as so and so and wife, so that their names were spelled out there. But because there was no actual list, one list of everybody who died, uh, one was left out until just a few years ago, uh, during COVID, and
oh wow.
she was finally cleared, Elizabeth Johnson Jr.,
Mm.
which was I
That's
got to write a letter about that.
oh,
But,
oh, that's
well,
wonderful.
why not? She's from Massachusetts, a civics class in North Andover, where she used to live, uh, adopted her cause, and it went through the legislature, and finally her
That's
name
good.
got it was attached to a very long budget thing,
Hey, that's
but it's in
okay.
there. It's cleared
It got done. Yes, right.
finally,
Ah,
very recently, in fact.
oh my gosh. That just seems wild to think that in this day and age, clear back from there, we're still clearing people like that. It took that long. Right. That's sad.
Well, there is also a current move to take note of the people who were hanged before 1692. There were some cases over the years. Not all of it is well documented because note that keeping records improved as time went on.
And there was a
But
fire, right? Like one of the places had a fire, I think in Topsfield or something about their records. I'm not sure 100, but that's what it said in one of the books.
fire, flood, and sticky fingers from collectors
That
do
too.
not help. But the known names and anybody else who suffered from it, that's going through the legislature now.
Wow. All these years later, and it's
Yeah,
still being, waited on.
it's crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and because a lot of people are so interested in seeing this done, but it's relevant today because witch accusations and executions still go on in other parts of the world. So let's make sure we get ours squared away and to better speak to why other people shouldn't be doing this too. Although I think most of it isn't governments prosecuting people as so much as neighbors.
Mm.
And people dying from it, or at least suffering ostracization.
It's sad. I mean,
I'm trying to
honestly,
think up the word, but being shunned,
yeah, it's
And-
terrible. I mean,
but it makes a darn good story.
it really does. And so many ties, like, I don't think people fully realize this little colony, like you said, goes into a lot of posterity today.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's important still. People,
And it's human nature. It's worse too. So that we all share.
we should learn. We should learn from this for sure. And Mary, especially sticking up for herself, even saying, she didn't have the right to counsel. How wise of her. Like, I thought that was fantastic,
Well, nobody had counsel because that hadn't really been invented.
Yeah, she was saying, then give us some way to defend ourselves. Here they are. And it's so sad.
Well, you're supposed to tell the truth, but then they didn't believe it.
Yeah. And I guess she made enough enemies where, I mean, in her case, especially where she got off, then nope, you're back in. It just seems so yucky. Yeah.
It is. And what happened in between? This blank space where the records so far, unless someone finds somebody's letters or diaries. Not enough people kept diaries.
Yeah, I always thought it was weird that she and this was sad, and this was in one book, and it said that she was crouched in her son's basement trying to hide when they came for her. And
Oh,
she wasn't home with her husband. And I thought that was super
Oh.
sad.
I
Yeah,
thought
I
she was
guess.
their family, but
Yeah, that
we
the
don't
son's
have
family.
a contemporary. Oh well.
Yeah, I think it was in a diary or a letter or something, and that they had to go there. That part of the warrant was there, and that they were explaining, but they thought it might have been because he was quite elderly and he had been sick. So maybe the son had to nurse her kind of back to health, before she could go back home. So he was closer to the jail, I guess.
I'm not familiar with that.
I wish I could remember the book, but it was so sad. I mean, they explained how he tried to hide her, and I just was like,
Oh.
ah. And that's the only reason why I remember it, because it made me kind of think, oh my gosh, this poor lady, just I can't imagine. But it is very important, especially now, maybe we don't have witchcraft anymore, but we do have to worry about the right to speak whatever we want, and whether that is, a good thing or a bad thing, it doesn't matter. We have to hold that up. People
Yes.
might say crazy things, but
A lot of
we
them do.
can't.
And
Yeah.
did.
Yes. And that's how this happened. But here we are, even as a Christian, but I'm a non-denominational Christian that is a little weird. I mean, granted, I still think it's so important for everybody to be able to practice whatever they want. Just don't hurt kids and animals and, whatever. People, if you're not doing that, knock yourself out,
Yeah.
Yeah. So sad. Yeah.
It is.
Well, this has been wonderful. Anything else about any of these characters, or especially Mary and her family, or about the witch trials themselves?
Well, as I said, men were accused too. And my last.
I've never heard that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, not as many. I mean, it was 3-1 women would be accused first. But I wrote 6 Women of Salem, my last book, and somebody interviewing me said, "Why don't you write about the men?" So I'm just finishing up on
Wonderful.
6 Men of Salem.
Oh,
Three
there
of-
was okay. There was a few.
Well, 3 of these are people who are accused, and 3 of them are people in authority, one sort or another.
Still
and they don't
interesting.
all
This
get up.
sounds good.
Well,
Ooh.
I did a lot of it during COVID, which made me buckle down and do it. But
Right.
I couldn't go out and research in libraries and archives at the same time. So that, but
Frustrating.
anyway, I feel like I was haunted by them. all 6 of them.
Well, I'm glad you're able to move forward on that and let people know a little bit about your books and what you do and like where you focused. You've got the 2 that you've mentioned, but please feel free to
Oh.
mention the others.
Oh, well, I did a number of picture books and young reader books dealing with Henry David Thoreau and ancient Rome and other interesting topics to me, and also a background of what everyday life was around the time of the witch trials, the life that was interrupted by all that. That was for young. But then over 27 years, I compiled my first adult book, Salem Witch Trials, a day-by-day chronicle of a community under siege. The publisher came up with the title. But it is a day-by-day arrangement of what happened where.
Oh,
It was the only way I could keep track of everything. And
right.
so, and it seemed to be a good way to keep the information in some sort of order.
I get it.
Some information keeps turning up, and some of it was proven. There's some mistakes in it, but I mean, I end with, and then the 5 were exonerated, and it's all over. But it isn't, because then poor Elizabeth Johnson was left out. So that's known now.
Right. Well, we can't know it all as deep as we go into things, like you said,
No, but we
everything
keep trying.
evolves. Yeah. And so I think it's good
got
that you
to be
keep going.
special.
Yeah. And let them know too about the six women book. So in case they missed that one, that's what we're
Six
chatting.
Women of Salem.
Yes.
And then Six Men is
Wonderful.
to come.
When do you think that one will be?
Well, it's going to go out. It's going to be sent out to the publishing world soon.
Good. Oh, wonderful.
But we'll see how they respond.
Well, your books are good, so I think it'll be just fine. I get the hesitancy because I'm the same. When you're done with a project and then you're like, I
don't want to jinx anything or nothing.
No.
But when it comes to uncertainties like the publishing world, you don't want to jinx anything.
No jinxing. So just soon, you guys keep your eyes out for it. And the others are all available. Are they all on Amazon or on your website?
They're online, Amazon. The adult ones are all the children's ones are out of print.
Awesome. Well, this is great. And I so appreciate your time. I know, like you said, you've studied for decades here. This isn't a little bit of research.
Which I wasn't intending to do when I started. I thought, this won't take long. No, it became my life.
Well, and somebody has to speak for these people that are no longer here. So I applaud you for that. And especially continuing on when somebody mentioned the men, you're going forward with that as well. So I love that. Love it.
Well, they had interesting stories, some interesting characters.
Amazing. Well, you guys go look for her books. Look for her online. You can type her name in. She comes right up all over. She's got tons of stuff out there. So go check her out. She's really put her heart and soul and her life into this, really, honestly. So I applaud you. And I thank you so much again for this interview. Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. And I hope to talk to you again another time, maybe when your book comes out.
That would be very nice. Thank you.
Wonderful. Have a wonderful day.